In this video, we're going to talk about why you should not try and make your show perfect and what you should do instead to make it more successful coming up. What's going on, everybody? My name is Karim Mustafa. I'm co-founder and CEO of Tribe Tactics. And in this series of videos, we basically want to give you everything that you need to be able to plan and grow your very own original series for your business. And one of the things that we always hear about at Tribe Tactics is, sometimes we don't want to start doing a show. We don't want to, start publishing something until it's absolutely perfect, whatever that means. And I'm here to hopefully destroy that myth with you and have a conversation around like what are the things that we could actually do other than aiming for perfectionism. So the first point I want to share with you around that is that perfectionism, like even being objective, like perfectionism is something that really depends on the person, the eye of the beholder, right? It's very subjective and it doesn't really exist if you think about it. 10 different people would probably define perfect and what perfect means to them completely differently. So if you think of 10 different people who are watching the show, what they are expecting to see and what's perfect in their minds. For some, it might be based on the production quality. For some, it might be based on the topics. For some, it might be the way that certain topics are approached. And everyone's definition of perfectionism, of course, is affected by their own past experiences, which are absolutely infinite. And so perfectionism doesn't really exist in the grand scheme of things. So it's a bit redundant for us to chase perfectionism, especially if it's something that we decide on like in-house, like inside our company. Like we just keep working on the same episodes until we believe they're perfect and ready for the world to see. It's we're never gonna get it absolutely perfect every single time, and so perfectionism doesn't really exist, and we should start to think differently about what are the things that really make shows stand out. So that's the first point. The second thing is, let's assume that we were able to achieve this proverbial state of perfectionism, right? For every episode, for every show that we put out. Even if that is the case, like it's not very, it's not very inviting if you think about it. It's actually a little bit alienating because if something is so perfect, it might be hard for us to be able to see ourselves in that, and it might come across as a little bit too polished, which makes it again a bit more difficult for us to be able to see ourselves in that. So that's the second point, which is that perfectionism could be a little bit alienating for people who are on the other end. Thirdly, is that if we think about it, perfectionism is actually an advanced form of procrastination, right? Because every time we work on something, we think that there's just this tiny bit that could be better, this tiny bit that could be better. And the same goes for any artistic or creative work. If you think about it, if you think of like a painter or a musician, like it's always known that there's this famous quote that artists they never really finish something as much as they just decide to stop working on it. Sometimes they just abandon it and let it out there, otherwise they'll be working on it forever, right? Excuse me. So otherwise they'll be working on it forever as such. So it really is, if you think about it, a form of very sophisticated procrastination, and it's not really doing us any good if we are always focusing on achieving perfectionism as such. Last but not least is what we could actually do and focus on as opposed to perfectionism, and that is very simply being relatable. If we're being relatable, if we're aspiring to become as relatable as possible to our audience, that's actually as close, in a weird way, that's actually as close to perfect as we can get, because ultimately people want to see themselves in the content you're creating. Not necessarily physically, but figuratively. They can identify with your point of view. Maybe you are speaking for them. You're providing them a voice for their worldviews, the way they see things, and so they naturally agree with what you're saying, and they'll naturally agree and follow with maybe other things that you suggest to them, as long as it's aligned with their worldview. As long as you keep it under the general lens of keeping things relatable, that's a more achievable goal, in my opinion, and also something that we've just seen is much more well received, as opposed to something that's so impossibly like polished and perfect that you can't even relate to it anymore. So hopefully that was helpful. To recap, perfectionism is highly subjective and therefore doesn't really exist. Second of all, even if we are able to achieve perfectionism, it's not really relatable, and it could be a little bit alienating for people on the other end. And then thirdly is, perfectionism is a really advanced form of procrastination hidden under the excuse of, oh yeah, we're just going to launch it once it's perfect. And then last but not least is, of course, focusing on relatability instead, and making that our goal, which is a lot more achievable and probably will be appreciated by our audiences a lot more. So let us know what you thought in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. And of course, if this is your first time seeing these videos, please do consider subscribing so that you don't miss out on the future episodes. And I'll talk to you later.